You're about to see something that feels impossible in 2026. Machines built before cars were normal, before the Eiffel Tower, before the telephone was common, still moving under their own power. Not replicas, not static museum pieces. These are living locomotives, boilers, pistons, valve gear, still running today. And the truth is brutal. Keeping them alive means preserving an entire lost industrial ecosystem from the 19th century. So let's count them down. The 10 oldest locomotives still operating today, and what it takes to keep each one breathing. 10. Virginia and Truckee. Number 22, Inyo, 1875. Built in 1875, the Inyo is what most people picture when they imagine a classic American steam locomotive. Tall stack, brass details, that confident, almost theatrical posture that quietly says, "Yes, I hauled the Wild West." And the wild part, it still runs. Originally built for the Virginia and Truckee Railroad, Inyo wasn't meant to be delicate or historic. It was designed to work, hauling freight, passengers, and mining wealth across unforgiving terrain. Somewhere along the way, it became so visually perfect that Hollywood adopted it, making Inyo one of the few locomotives with both rail mileage and screen credits. Keeping it operational today isn't nostalgia, it's precision. Boilers don't care how famous they are. Steam pressure doesn't respect age. Every run is inspected, planned, and treated like borrowed time. When Inyo moves, you're not watching a museum piece. You're watching a 19th century machine still doing its job. And the scary part is this: Inyo isn't even close to the oldest one still running. 9. Glenbrook, 1875. Built in 1875, Glenbrook looks like a polite antique until you remember what it was actually built to do. Drag heavy timber out of the forests around Lake Tahoe like it owed the trees money. This Baldwin-built locomotive wasn't designed for elegance. It was designed for punishment. Rough track, sharp curves, steep grades, the kind of working conditions that chew through machinery and don't apologize afterward. And yet somehow, Glenbrook survived it all. Today, it's preserved by the Nevada State Railroad Museum and remains operational, which is frankly absurd when you consider how few original components from the 1870s were ever expected to last this long. Every steaming is a careful balance of heritage and mechanical reality. You don't rush a locomotive like this. You negotiate with it. What makes Glenbrook special isn't glamour, it's honesty. This engine never pretended to be anything other than a working animal, and that stubborn DNA is exactly why it's still breathing fire nearly 150 years later. And the next one? Same year, different legend. 8. Eureka and Palisade. Number 4, Eureka, 1875. Built in 1875, Eureka is one of those locomotives that survives purely because someone, at some point, refused to give up. This Baldwin 440 was built during America's rail boom. When locomotives weren't heritage objects, they were tools, expected to work hard and be replaced when they wore out. Eureka missed that memo. Today, it's privately owned and still operational, which already puts it in rare company. What makes it even stranger is how compact and graceful it looks for something designed in an era that loved excess. No oversized drama here, just clean lines, confidence, and a machine that knows exactly what it's capable of. Operating a locomotive this old isn't romantic, it's calculated. Fire, water, pressure, and metal fatigue all have opinions, and none of them care that the engine is historic. Every steaming is earned. When Eureka runs, it doesn't feel like preservation. It feels like defiance, which makes the next entry even crazier. 7. Isle of Man, Railway Number 4. Lock, 1874. Built in 1874, Lock quietly proves that survival isn't always about fame. Sometimes it's about being too useful to kill. This Isle of Man railway locomotive wasn't built to impress rail historians. It was built to turn up every morning and move people across an island. Reliably and without drama, a century and a half later, it's still doing exactly that. Unlike many engines on this list, Lock isn't a special occasion-only celebrity. It has spent much of its preserved life in regular service, which is a polite way of saying it doesn't get pampered. it works. And that's precisely why it survived when flashier machines didn't. There's something humbling about watching a locomotive this old run on a timetable. No speeches, no ceremony, just steam, motion, and muscle memory baked into metal. Lock doesn't feel historic while it's moving. It feels normal, and that's the most unsettling part. Now we jump back again into the 1860s. 6. Festiniog Railway, Welsh Pony, 1867. Built in 1867, Welsh Pony exists in that dangerous zone of history where most machines quietly disappeared. Too old to be modern, too young to be considered untouchable, and for a long time, that nearly happened. What saved Welsh Pony wasn't luck, it was stubborn human effort. After spending decades out of service, the locomotive was painstakingly restored and returned to steam in 2020, putting it back where it belongs, hauling trains instead of collecting dust. For an engine from the 1860s, that's not a comeback. That's a resurrection. There's nothing flashy about Welsh Pony. It's compact, purposeful, and honest. Built to move slate on tight curves and steep grades, it represents a time when locomotives were engineered for specific problems, not broad perfection. Watching it run today feels slightly unreal, like history forgot to stop the clock. And if you're wondering, okay, so what's older than 1867? We have our next entry. 5. Talyllyn Railway, Number 2, Dolgoch, 1866. Built in 1866, Dolgoch comes from a time when locomotive design was still being figured out in real time. There were no rule books, no proven formulas, just engineers solving problems with steam, steel, and optimism. And somehow it worked. Dolgoch was built for the Talyllyn Railway in Wales, a narrow-gauge line that never pretended to be glamorous. This locomotive hauled slate, supplies, and people through tight curves and uneven track, doing quiet, uncelebrated work for decades. Today it remains operational, which already puts it in a category most Victorian machines never reached. What makes Dolgoch special isn't speed or size, it's character. Slightly unconventional proportions, a layout that reflects early experimentation, and a design that only makes sense once you remember how young railways still were. When it steams today, it doesn't feel restored, it feels remembered. And the scary part is that even 1866 isn't old enough to crack the top 4. 4. Festiniog Railway, Palmerston, 1864. Built in 1864, Palmerston is what happens when a locomotive survives long enough to outlive multiple definitions of old. By the time many railways were standardizing designs, Palmerston was already a veteran. Originally built to haul slate on the Festiniog Railway, this engine worked hard, was rebuilt, withdrawn, nearly forgotten, and then brought back because some machines refused to disappear quietly. Today it's restored and operational for special workings, which at this age is about as close to immortality as steam gets. Palmerston doesn't run often, and that's the point. Every outing is deliberate. Every mile is treated like it matters because it does. You're not just operating a locomotive, you're protecting a survivor from an era where most of its peers vanished without ceremony. When Palmerston moves, it feels like a controlled breach in time. A Victorian machine briefly allowed into the present. Now time to move on to our oldest 3. 3. Talyllyn Railway Number 1, Talyllyn, 1864. Built in 1864, Talyllyn isn't just old, it's foundational. This locomotive sits at the heart of railway preservation itself, quietly proving that steam didn't survive by accident, but by stubborn human refusal to let it die. Originally built to serve the Talyllyn Railway in Wales, this engine hauled slate and passengers when railways were still novelties. Fast forward more than 160 years, and Talyllyn remains operational, returning to service in 2024 after a meticulous overhaul that treated every component like irreplaceable history. Because frankly, it is. Talyllyn isn't large, it isn't fast, and it doesn't need to be. Its importance comes from continuity. The fact that it still does the same job, on the same railway, with the same purpose it had in the Victorian era. When it steams today, it doesn't feel preserved, it feels uninterrupted. Now, if Talyllyn is third, what's older than 1864 that still runs? Two answers, and both are ridiculous. 2. Festiniog Railway Prince, 1863. Built in 1863, Prince is often described as the oldest operating steam locomotive still running on its original railway, and somehow that claim actually holds up. This engine predates most standard gauge mainlines, yet it continues to run on the Festiniog Railway as if that fact is merely trivia. Prince was designed for narrow gauge slate traffic, where efficiency mattered more than size. Compact, purposeful, and unapologetically industrial, it represents an era when railways were solving local problems, not building global systems. That focus is exactly why it survived. Keeping Prince operational today is less about restoration and more about stewardship. Every steaming is planned, measured, and treated as a privilege. Nothing is rushed. Nothing is taken for granted. Because at this age, wear isn't just mechanical, it's historical. When Prince moves, it doesn't feel like heritage rail. It feels like a living artifact that never accepted retirement. But Prince is not number one, because the oldest operating locomotive on this list was built when railways were still the future. 1. GKB 671, 1860. Built in 1860, GKB 671 is where this list stops feeling impressive and starts feeling wrong. This locomotive was built when railways were still a promise, not a certainty, and yet somehow it's still capable of running today. Originally constructed for the Austrian Southern Railway, GKB 671 predates mass electrification, standardized safety systems, and most modern nations' rail networks. And unlike many engines this old, it isn't frozen behind velvet ropes. It's maintained in operational condition and steamed for special excursions, which is borderline unbelievable once you consider the stresses involved. At this age, nothing is routine. Every firing is conservative. Every inspection is exhaustive. You're not running a train, you're negotiating with 19th century metallurgy and hoping everyone involved knew what they were doing. Thankfully, they usually did. When GKB 671 moves, it doesn't feel nostalgic. It feels defiant, because this isn't history being remembered. It's history still breathing. And that's the moment you realize some machines don't fade away. They just keep going. If this blew your mind, hit subscribe, because this channel isn't about museums, it's about machines that refuse to die. Comment which locomotive shocked you most, and if you want a part 2 on the oldest diesel and electric locomotives still running, say the word.